August 9th, 1942. Savo Island. 0147 hours. The water is boiling, not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. The Pacific Ocean, normally a cold 72 degrees, has reached 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Fuel oil from ruptured ships burns across the surface like a lake of fire. Rescue swimmers dive in to pull survivors from the wreckage and surface with third-degree burns across their backs and shoulders. 4 American heavy cruisers have gone to the bottom in 45 minutes. USS Astoria, USS Quincy, USS Vincennes, USS Canberra. Steel ships weighing 10,000 tons each, now twisted wreckage settling into mud 3,000 feet below the surface. 1,077 American sailors are dead. Bodies float in clusters, life jackets keeping corpses upright like sentries, guarding nothing. Some are burned beyond recognition. Some are intact, perfect, looking like they might wake up at any moment. Dog tags clink against each other in the current, a sound like wind chimes made of death. Japanese losses, 0. Not a single ship, not a single sailor. 0. The Imperial Japanese Navy has vanished into the darkness, leaving only devastation and a question that will haunt American admirals for the next 3 years. How do you fight an enemy you cannot see until they have already killed you? Here is the problem, stated simply. The Japanese Type 93 torpedo. The Long Lance travels at 49 knots. It carries 1,000 pounds of high explosives. It leaves almost no wake. American captains cannot see it coming until their ships are breaking apart. The effective range 11 miles. American naval guns, the most powerful in the world, can throw shells 20 miles, but hitting a moving target beyond 15 miles is virtually impossible. The scatter pattern at extreme range makes precision a fantasy. Every gunnery manual, every tactical doctrine, every officer with 20 years of experience agrees beyond 15 miles you are wasting ammunition. So here is the death equation, the mathematical certainty that is killing American sailors by the hundreds every month. Get close enough to hit Japanese ships with your guns, and their torpedoes kill you first. Stay far enough away to avoid torpedoes, and your guns cannot hit anything. There is no solution. The equation balances only in blood. American sailors have a name for this. They call it the Tokyo Express. Japanese destroyers appear at night-launch torpedoes from beyond effective gun range and disappear before American ships can respond. Bodies wash up on beaches for weeks afterward, sometimes just pieces. But 3 years from this night of burning water and floating corpses, a Pittsburgh welder and a Kentucky farm boy with thick glasses will rewrite every rule of naval warfare. They will destroy an entire Japanese fleet from a distance the enemy believes is impossible. They will prove that the horizon is not a limit, but an invitation, and the United States Navy will try to stop them. Let me take you to March 1944, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The war is 2 years old. The steel mills run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The sky is permanently gray from coal smoke and furnace exhaust. The Monongahela River runs rust-colored from iron oxide runoff. This is the city that builds America's ships, America's tanks, America's guns. And this is where Robert Mitchell learned to weld. He is 23 years old. 5'9", 162 pounds, dark hair already thinning at the temples. His hands are scarred from hot metal and grinding wheels. His fingernails are permanently stained black from graphite and steel dust. He has been welding since he was 16, learned the trade from his uncle Vernon, who worked the Homestead steel strike of 1892 and lost 2 fingers to a drop hammer in 1903. Robert's father, Garrett Mitchell, is a tool crib attendant at the same mill where he once operated a rolling press. That was before 1938, before 400 tons of steel plate shifted during a procedure and crushed his left hand. Now Garrett works the cage, handing out drill bits and grinding wheels to men who still have both hands intact. He earns $42 a week. Before the accident, he earned $65. Robert's mother, Lorraine, is a seamstress. She takes in mending at night, working by lamplight after her children are asleep. 5 cents to repair a torn shirt, 10 cents to hem a dress, 15 cents to patch work pants with reinforced seams that might last another 6 months. On a good week, she earns $11. On a bad week, $7. There are 3 Mitchell children. Robert is the oldest. Dwight, 18, was rejected from military service 4F classification due to flat feet, so severe he cannot march more than half a mile without bleeding blisters. Eleanor is 16, works the punch press at a munitions factory, comes home with her fingers stained yellow from cordite powder. Before the war, this was a family barely holding on. After Pearl Harbor, it became a family serving something larger than survival. Robert sends home $35 every month from his Navy salary of $60. The other $25 covers his expenses, though there are no expenses aboard a battleship, except dice games and the occasional Coca-Cola when the ship is in port. Mostly, Robert saves. He has a dream of opening his own machine shop after the war. Somewhere small, maybe on the north side. A place where precision matters more than speed, where a good weld is worth more than a fast weld. But that is after the war. First, there is the war. March 17th, 1944. Robert Mitchell receives his orders. Report to USS Dakota Pearl Harbor by April 1st. Assignment, Turret 2 loading crew. He has never been more than 200 miles from Pittsburgh. He has never seen the ocean. The farthest he has traveled is Cleveland once for a cousin's wedding in 1940. His mother cries when he tells her. His father shakes his hand with the good hand and says, "Make us proud, son." Dwight, who wanted desperately to serve and cannot, says nothing, just claps Robert on the shoulder and walks away. Eleanor asks, "Are you scared?" Robert thinks about this. Then he says, "I'm more scared of letting people down than I am of getting hurt." It is the truest thing he will say for the next 3 years. April 4th, 1944, Pearl Harbor territory of Hawaii. Robert steps off the transport ship and sees USS Dakota for the first time. She is bigger than 3 city blocks of Pittsburgh. Longer than the Cathedral of Learning, is tall. Her hull is gray, the color of storm clouds, the color of inevitability. Her main battery, 9 16-inch guns in 3 turrets, look like steel mill smokestacks laid sideways, each barrel 66 feet long, each one capable of throwing 2,700 pounds of steel 23 miles. Robert thinks about his father's crushed hand. 400 tons of steel did that. These guns throw more than a ton of steel every 30 seconds. What could that do to a man? What could that do to a ship? He does not want to know. But he is going to find out. Turret 2 is Robert's new home. It is a steel chamber 40 feet across 3 levels deep with walls 18 inches thick. 14 men work this turret. 7 loaders, 4 powder handlers, 2 gun captains, 1 turret officer. When the guns fire, all 14 men must execute a choreographed sequence that has been drilled into muscle memory so deep they can do it in their sleep, in the dark, in the chaos of combat when the world is ending around them. Robert's job is simple. When the bell rings, he helps load a 2,700-pound shell into the breech. Then he helps load 6 powder bags, each one containing explosive propellant that can detonate if mishandled. Then he steps back. Then the gun fires. Then he does it again. In combat, he must do this every 30 seconds. For as long as the shooting lasts, no breaks, no mistakes, 1 error kills everyone in the turret. The gun captain is Marcus Webb, 41 years old, from Knoxville, Tennessee, 18 years in the Navy, voice like gravel in a cement mixer. Webb has commanded gun crews on 3 different battleships. He has seen action in the Atlantic, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. He has fired more 16-inch shells than Robert has welded steel beams. On Robert's first day, Webb gathers the loading crew and says, some of you boys are farm kids, some of you are factory workers, some of you barely finished high school, I don't care. In this turret, you are all the same. You are parts of a machine, a very big, very expensive, very deadly machine. If one part fails, the whole machine fails. If the machine fails during combat, we all die. Questions? No one has questions. Good, Webb says. Let's see if you can lift a shell without dropping it. The training is brutal. Each shell weighs more than Robert's father's 1936 Ford. It takes 3 men to maneuver it from the storage rack to the loading tray, then 3 men to ram it into the breech. The timing must be perfect. Too slow and the ship's roll throws off the aim. Too fast and the shell jams in the breech, which means the gun cannot fire, which means Your ship is in combat with 1/3 of its firepower offline. Robert develops new muscles in places he did not know could hurt. His lower back, his hip flexors, the small muscles between his ribs. He wakes up at 400 every morning, unable to move for the first 10 minutes. By 04:30, he is at morning drill loading practice shells that weigh the same as real shells but contain no explosives. Load, step back, reload, step back. Again, again, again. His hands blister, then callus, then blister again under the calluses. He develops a hernia in his second week. A disc in his lower back slips out of alignment from lifting wrong. The corpsman tapes him up and says, "You'll heal or you'll get replaced. Navy doesn't care which." Robert heals. He has to. His family needs that $35 a month. At night, he dreams about shells, dropping them, watching them roll across the deck, watching them explode in slow motion, the flash of light, the heat, the concussive wave that turns men into red mist. He wakes up sweating, gripping his bunk frame, breathing hard. Webb notices. After one particularly bad night when Robert shows up to drill looking like he has not slept, Webb pulls him aside. "Dreams?" Webb asks. Robert nods. "Good," Webb says. "Dreams mean you understand the stakes. Men who don't dream get careless. Careless gets you killed. You dream, you stay sharp." And it is the closest thing to comfort Robert will get. He takes it. But here is what Robert does not know yet. The shells he is learning to load the guns, he is learning to serve the ship, he is learning to trust with his life. All of it is about to become part of a revolution. A revolution in how wars are fought, how enemies are destroyed, how mathematics can reach across the horizon and touch death to targets that no human eye can see. And the man who will start that revolution does not look like a revolutionary at all. Captain Thomas Crawford reports aboard USS Dakota on April 10, 1944. He is 46 years old, 5'10", 152 pounds, wireframe glasses, with lenses so thick they magnify his eyes, making him look perpetually surprised. His hair is thinning brown, going grey at the temples. He slouches when he walks. He mumbles when he speaks. Officers frequently ask him to repeat himself. He looks like a high school geometry teacher who got lost on the way to class and somehow ended up commanding a battleship. This is not an accident. This is who Thomas Crawford is. He was born on a farm in Shelby County, Kentucky in 1898. His father grew tobacco. His mother raised chickens. Thomas was the fourth of 6 children, unremarkable in every way except one. He could see numbers the way other people see colors. When he was 12 years old, he attended the Kentucky State Fair. There was a carnival game, throw a baseball at a pyramid of milk bottles, knock them all down, win a prize. Most boys tried and failed. The bottles were weighted. The angles were wrong. It was designed to be nearly impossible. Thomas stood and watched. He did not throw. He watched other boys throw. He calculated trajectory, velocity, impact angle, bottle weight, distribution. After 20 minutes of observation, he stepped up, paid his nickel and threw. He won on the first try. Then he won again. Then again. The carnival operator asked him to leave. When he was 19, Thomas represented the United States at the 1920 Olympics in Antwerp, Belgium, shooting competitions, rifle pistol moving targets, stationary targets. He won 7 medals, 5 gold, 2 silver. No American shooter before or since has matched that record. But here is what made Thomas Crawford different. He did not win because he had steady hands or good eyes or natural talent. He won because he calculated windage elevation, bullet drop temperature effects, and probability curves in his head faster than other shooters could even aim. He turned shooting into mathematics, and mathematics properly applied is always correct. After the Olympics, Crawford joined the Navy, not because he loved the sea or craved adventure. He joined because the Navy had the biggest guns in the world, and Thomas Crawford wanted to see if mathematics could make those guns hit targets no one else believed possible. For 20 years he studied ballistics, trajectory curves, atmospheric effects, Earth's rotation, the Coriolis effect that curves shells to the right in the northern hemisphere. He published papers that other officers called interesting but impractical. He proposed firing solutions that gunnery instructors dismissed as theoretical nonsense. And then the war started, and American ships started dying. Crawford watched the casualty reports: Savo Island, Tassafaronga, Cape Esperance, Guadalcanal, American cruisers and destroyers torn apart by Japanese torpedoes launched from beyond effective gun range. He read the after-action reports, he studied the engagement ranges, he saw the death equation, and he realized the equation could be solved. Not with better tactics or braver sailors or more ships. The equation could be solved with mathematics and a piece of technology that almost no one in the Navy understood yet: radar. On April the 12th, 1944, Captain Crawford calls his first briefing aboard USS Dakota. Every officer on the ship attends. The wardroom is packed, standing room only. Crawford stands at the front with a chalkboard behind him covered in equations that look like ancient Greek to most of the men present. He does not waste time with pleasantries. He draws a diagram, a ship, a target, a curved line between them. Then he begins explaining his theory. The Mark 8 radar system, currently installed on every Iowa-class battleship, can track surface contacts beyond the horizon. It sends out radio waves that bounce off metal hulls and return to the ship, providing range bearing and speed. The Navy uses this for detection, finding enemy ships before they find you, but Crawford sees something else. He sees a targeting system. The Mark 1A fire control computer, a mechanical marvel of gears and cams and electrical relays, can take data from the radar and calculate a firing solution. It accounts for wind speed and direction, air temperature and density, barometric pressure, the ship's own speed and heading, the target's speed and heading, the rotation of the Earth itself. It solves equations in seconds that would take human mathematicians hours to complete. It removes human error from the targeting process. It makes precision possible at ranges that every gunnery doctrine says are impossible. Crawford finishes his explanation and looks at the assembled officers. He says, the Mark 8 radar combined with the Mark 1A computer eliminates human judgment from long-range gunnery. We can hit targets at 23 miles, possibly further, with accuracy rates exceeding 70%. Silence. Then one officer, a lieutenant commander named Harrison, raises his hand. Sir, with respect, scatter patterns at ranges beyond 15 miles make precision targeting impossible. That's not opinion, that's physics. The shell dispersal alone, Crawford interrupts. I have accounted for shell dispersal. The math works. Another officer, the executive officer, a man named Brennan, who will become important later. Captain, the Navy has invested decades and millions of dollars training our gunners to fight using visual targeting and range finding. You're asking us to throw that away and trust machines. Crawford looks at him. I'm asking you to trust mathematics. Mathematics doesn't win battles, Brennan says. Men do. Mathematics, Crawford says quietly, keeps men alive long enough to win battles. Nyits. The briefing ends badly. Officers file out, muttering. Most think Crawford is brilliant but impractical. Some think he is wasting their time. A few think he might be slightly insane. Robert Mitchell is not at the briefing. Enlisted men do not attend officer briefings. But word spreads through the ship the way word always spreads through the mess deck, through the berthing compartments, through the men who clean the wardroom and hear things they are not supposed to hear. The new captain thinks radar can shoot for us. The new captain wants to trust computers over human eyes. The new captain is either a genius or a fool, and the smart money is on fool. Robert hears this and thinks about his work. He is a welder. Welding is mathematics, amperage, voltage, travel speed, bead width, penetration depth. You calculate the right settings for the metal you are joining. You apply heat at the correct rate. The result is a joint stronger than the base metal. If you ignore the math and just go by feel, the weld fails. And when welds fail on a Liberty ship hull, the ship breaks in half and 40 men drown. So maybe Robert thinks this captain is not so crazy. Maybe mathematics works for guns the same way it works for welds. But Robert is a loader. His job is to load shells, not to think about whether the captain's theories are correct. He goes to drill. He loads practice shells. He does his job. And then in December 1943, before Robert even joins the ship, something happens that changes everything. December 2nd, 1943. The Solomon Islands, USS Pittsburgh. A heavy cruiser, 9,000 tons, 9 8-inch guns, is part of a destroyer screen protecting a supply convoy to Guadalcanal. At 03:17 hours, 3 Japanese destroyers emerge from a rain squall at 11 miles distance. The engagement lasts 9 minutes. 4 long-lance torpedoes find their targets. USS Pittsburgh takes 2 hits amidships. She breaks in half. The forward section sinks in 4 minutes. The stern section stays afloat for another 12 minutes before going under. 312 sailors die. 61 survive, pulled from the water by destroyer escorts. The Japanese destroyers vanish back into the rain squall, untouched. Among the dead seamen, Daniel Kowalski, 19 years old, from Homestead, Pennsylvania, tool and die apprentice before the war. Robert Mitchell's second cousin. The telegram arrives at the Kowalski house on December 8th. Robert's Aunt Stella receives it. Her husband is at work at the mill. She reads it alone in her kitchen, the yellow Western Union paper shaking in her hands. That night she writes a letter to Robert, who is still in training in San Diego. The letter is 3 pages long, but the important part is this: Danny wanted to be a tool and die maker like your Uncle Vernon. He was going to take over Vernon's shop when Vernon retired. Now I have a folded flag and a telegram that says, "Died in service to his country." And what good does that do when I have no son to bury? They didn't even find his body, Robert. Just oil and debris. Tell me what that flag is worth when there is no grave to put it on. Robert receives the letter on December 14th. He reads it sitting on his bunk in the barracks. He reads it 3 times. Then he folds it carefully and puts it in his sea bag. And he does not cry, because crying does not change anything. But something changes inside him. Some equation rebalances. Danny was 19, Robert is 23. 4 years difference. Danny wanted to make precision tools. Robert makes precision welds. Danny died because American ships cannot shoot far enough to kill Japanese destroyers before those destroyers kill American ships. If there is a way to fix that, if there is mathematics that can reach across 20 miles of ocean and touch death to enemy ships before they can kill more boys like Danny, then Robert wants to be part of it. He just does not know yet that he will get his chance. April 1944. Robert is now aboard USS Dakota. He has been training for 3 weeks. His hands have calluses on top of calluses. His back has stopped hurting every morning. He can load a shell in 22 seconds, which is good, but not great. Webb wants 20 seconds. Webb always wants better. One night, Robert cannot sleep. It is 0300 hours. The ship is in port at Pearl Harbor, tied to the dock, quiet except for the watchstanders and the hum of ventilation fans. Robert gets up, pulls on his dungarees and walks to the mess deck. He is surprised to find the lights on. He is more surprised to find Captain Crawford sitting at one of the tables, surrounded by papers covered in equations, drinking coffee from a metal cup. Crawford looks up. "Can't sleep." "No, sir," Robert says. "Me neither," Crawford says. He gestures at the papers, trying to solve a problem. Robert should leave. Officers and enlisted men do not socialize, but something makes him ask, "What kind of problems, sir?" Crawford looks at him, studies him. Then he says, "How do you hit something you cannot see?" Robert thinks about this. Then he says, "Same way you weld a joint you cannot see from the other side. You calculate penetration depth. You trust the math." Crawford smiles. It is the first time Robert has seen him smile. "Exactly," he says. "You trust the math." They talk for 20 minutes. Crawford explains his theory in simple terms. Radar sees what eyes cannot. Computers calculate what brains cannot calculate fast enough. The guns do not care whether the target is visible or not. They only care about bearing and elevation. If you give them the right numbers, they will hit. Robert listens. Then he says, "Sir, my cousin Danny died on the Pittsburgh. Torpedoes. The ship couldn't shoot back because the Japs were too far away." Crawford nods slowly. "I read the after-action report. I'm sorry." "If your way works," Robert says, "maybe other people's cousins don't have to die." "That's the idea," Crawford says. At that moment, the mess deck door opens. The ship's cook, a man named Gordon Price from Mobile, Alabama, 38 years old, 16 years in the Navy, walks in carrying a crate of eggs. He sees the captain and the seamen sitting together. and stops. "Sirs, you boys want breakfast. Gonna be a long day tomorrow." Crawford looks at Robert. "You hungry?" Robert realizes he is. "Yes, sir." "Then let's eat," Crawford says. Gordon Price sets up at the griddle. He cracks eggs onto the hot surface, 2 each. He pulls out bacon from the refrigerator, lays 6 strips on the grill. The smell hits immediately. Salt and smoke, and something Robert cannot name but recognizes from home, from his mother's kitchen on Saturday mornings before the rationing got bad. The bacon grease spits and hisses on the griddle like arc welding flux. Gordon flips the strips with a spatula, practiced motions muscle memory from feeding hundreds of sailors every day for 16 years. The edges crisp up. The fat in the middle stays soft. The grease pools around the strips like liquid gold catching the overhead lights. Robert has not smelled real bacon in 8 months. In training, they got powdered eggs and Spam. Aboard ship, they get better food, but nothing like this. This is fresh. This is real. Gordon plates the food. 2 eggs each, yolks intact, bright as welding torch flames. 4 strips of bacon, toast white bread, real butter melting down the sides, coffee so strong you could stand a spoon in it, poured into metal cups that are hot enough to burn your fingers if you are not careful. Robert takes a bite of bacon, crispy first. The texture breaks between his teeth, then the fat melts, coats his tongue, his throat like warm oil, like something alive. Salt explodes across his taste buds, then something underneath the salt, something subtle. Sweetness. How can salt taste sweet? But it does. For 20 seconds, Robert is not on a battleship in Pearl Harbor. He is at his mother's kitchen table. His father is reading the newspaper. Dwight is complaining about school. Eleanor is talking about a boy she likes. Everything is normal. Everything is before the war, before Danny died, before the world broke into pieces that cannot be put back together. Then he swallows and he is back. Crawford is watching him. "You thinking about home?" "Thinking about my cousin Danny," Robert says. "He's eating nothing now. We're eating bacon at 3 in the morning on a battleship in the Pacific. Doesn't seem fair." "Fair doesn't win wars," Crawford says. "Math does. Tomorrow we prove the math works. Tomorrow we prove that in the team. Then maybe fewer boys end up like Danny." Gordon, still at the griddle, speaks without turning around. "My boy's at Anzio right now. Infantry. If your math brings him home faster, Captain, I'll cook you bacon every morning." Crawford does not answer. He just nods and goes back to his eggs. They eat in silence. When they are finished, Robert stands to leave. He says, "Thank you for breakfast, sir." Crawford looks up. "Thank you for believing the math works." "Me? I'm a welder, sir," Robert says. "If the math is right, the weld holds. If the math is wrong, men die. I trust math." "Then you'll do fine," Crawford says. Robert returns to his bunk. He still cannot sleep, but now it is for a different reason. Tomorrow, Crawford is going to test his theory. Tomorrow, Robert is going to load shells for a captain who believes in mathematics and radar and hitting targets no one can see. Tomorrow, everything might change. Or tomorrow, nothing changes and more boys like Danny die, while admirals argue about doctrine and tradition and the way things have always been done. Robert does not know which will happen. But he knows this. He is going to load those shells as fast and as accurately as he possibly can. Because if Crawford is right, then mathematics can reach across the horizon and stop the Tokyo Express before it kills anyone else. And if Crawford is wrong, at least they tried. That is all any of them can do. Try. Load the shells. Trust the math. Hope that numbers are stronger than steel and that precision is more powerful than hatred. The horizon is waiting, and tomorrow they are going to reach across it. January 20th, 1944, 2 weeks before Robert Mitchell arrives aboard USS Dakota, waters northeast of Oahu, 73 miles from Pearl Harbor. The sky is overcast, grey clouds pressing down like a steel ceiling. The ocean is restless swells running 4 to 6 feet, the kind of chop that makes precision gunnery difficult even at close range. Captain Thomas Crawford stands on the bridge looking at a target he cannot see. 19.2 miles away, a decommissioned destroyer hulk sits at anchor. USS Worden, a flush-deck destroyer from the Great War, now stripped of weapons and equipment, now serving as target practice for ships that will fight the current war. She is barely visible even through binoculars, a grey smudge on a grey horizon, more suggestion than certainty. Crawford has not requested permission for this exercise. He has not filed the proper forms. He has not informed Admiral Victor Brennan, the task force commander, that he intends to fire live ammunition at extreme range using experimental targeting methods. He is breaking regulations. If this fails, his career is over. If this succeeds, he might save thousands of lives. The mathematics say it will succeed. Crawford trusts mathematics more than he trusts regulations. Fire control reports ready, sir, the executive officer says. His name is Hammond. He is 42 years old, career Navy, and he thinks Crawford is making a terrible mistake. But Crawford is the captain, and orders are orders. Crawford looks at the radar scope. The green sweep rotates, painting the target at bearing 045, range 19.2 miles. The Mark I, a fire control computer, hums and clicks, mechanical gears, solving differential equations, calculating wind drift and Coriolis effect, and 100 other variables that determine where a shell will land after 93 seconds of flight time. "Stand by all turrets," Crawford says. His voice is steady. His hands are not. He grips the railing to hide the tremor. This is the moment. This is where theory meets reality, where mathematics confronts the physical world and either holds or shatters. Fire. The world explodes. 3 turrets, 9 16-inch guns fire simultaneously. The blast is so violent that the ship lurches sideways. Men on the bridge grab for handholds. The concussion wave slaps against exposed skin like an open palm. The sound is not a sound, it is a physical force that hammers eardrums and rattles teeth in their sockets. 9 shells, each weighing 2,700 pounds, arc into the grey sky. They climb higher and higher until they disappear into the cloud layer, swallowed by grey mist. Then silence. 93 seconds of silence. Crawford watches his stopwatch. The second hand sweeps around the dial. 60 seconds, 70, 80. Somewhere out there, 9 shells are reaching the apex of their flight, beginning their descent, falling toward a target that the gun crews never saw, guided only by numbers calculated by a machine. 90 seconds. Through his binoculars, Crawford sees the first splash. A geyser of white water erupts 140 yards short of the target. A miss, then another splash, this one long overshooting by 70 yards, and then the third shell hits. The destroyer hulk shudders. A flash of light, a column of smoke, metal screaming as it tears. The old ship lists to starboard, taking water through a hole the size of a garage door. The fourth shell hits 6 seconds later, direct impact amidships. The hulk breaks. The officers on the bridge are silent. They are watching something that should not be possible. 2 direct hits at 19 miles, on the second salvo after 1 ranging shot. Crawford lowers his binoculars. His hands are shaking worse now, but not from fear. From vindication. Hammond stares at him. "My God, it worked." "Mathematics," Crawford says quietly, "always works." But here is what Crawford does not know yet. 5 miles away aboard the heavy cruiser USS Indianapolis, Admiral Victor Brennan is also watching through binoculars. He has seen the same thing Crawford saw. 2 hits at extreme range. Precision that should be impossible. And Victor Brennan understands immediately what this means. If radar-directed gunnery works, if ships can hit targets beyond visual range with reliable accuracy, then every tactical doctrine the Navy has developed over the past 30 years becomes obsolete. Every gunnery officer who built his career on visual ranging and human judgment becomes obsolete. Every admiral who made his reputation on conventional tactics becomes obsolete, including Victor Brennan. He lowers his binoculars. He turns to his flag lieutenant. "Get me Captain Crawford's activity log for the past 72 hours. I want to know if he filed authorization for this exercise." The lieutenant hesitates. "Sir, the results?" "I don't care about the results," Brennan says. "I care about the regulations he broke to achieve them." 2 days later, Captain Thomas Crawford is summoned to USS Indianapolis for a formal inquiry. The wardroom is full of officers. Admiral Brennan sits at the head of the table. To his right is Rear Admiral Theodore Sutherland, a gunnery specialist who has commanded battleships in both the Atlantic and Pacific. To his left is Captain Lewis Hammond, an instructor at the Naval War College, author of 3 textbooks on naval tactics. Crawford sits alone at the opposite end of the table. No lawyer, no advocate, just him and a folder full of firing data that no one wants to see. Brennan opens the proceedings. Captain Crawford, you are here to answer charges of unauthorized ammunition expenditure, reckless endangerment of your crew, and deviation from established gunnery doctrine. Do you understand these charges? I understand them, sir, Crawford says. Do you dispute them? Crawford pauses. Then he says, I dispute their relevance. The room goes cold. Brennan leans forward. Explain. Crawford opens his folder. On January 20th, I fired 9 16-inch shells at a target 19.2 miles distant. Each shell costs approximately $1,400. Total cost, $12,600. In the same week, the Navy lost 2 destroyers to Japanese torpedoes. Each destroyer cost $6 million. Each destroyer carried 240 men. Do the mathematics, sir. I spent $12,000 proving a method that can save $6 million and 240 lives per engagement. You did not have authorization, Brennan says. I did not have time to request authorization, Crawford says. Every week we delay implementing this capability. American sailors die. I chose to save lives rather than follow paperwork. Hammond speaks up. Captain Scatter, patterns at ranges beyond 15 miles make precision targeting impossible. You achieved 2 hits out of 9 shells. That is a 22% success rate. Conventional doctrine at moderate range achieves similar results without risking, Crawford interrupts. Conventional doctrine at moderate range puts our ships within torpedo range. Japanese long-lance torpedoes have an 11-mile effective range. We cannot engage effectively beyond 15 miles using visual methods, which means we must close to within 11 miles, which means we die first. Sutherland, who has been silent until now, asks, what was the accuracy rate of your second salvo? Crawford looks at him. We only fired 1 salvo, sir. You achieved 2 hits on the first salvo. Yes, sir. Sutherland writes something in his notebook. Continue. Brennan cuts in. The point remains, Captain. You endangered your crew with an experimental method that violates basic ballistic principles. Scatter patterns are accounted for in the Mark 1A's calculations, Crawford says. The computer predicts dispersion based on barrel wear, powder temperature, and projectile weight variation. It adjusts aim point to maximize probability of impact. The mathematics are sound. Mathematics don't fight wars, Brennan says. Men do. Mathematics, Crawford says, and his voice is very quiet now, very dangerous. Keep men alive long enough to fight wars. The inquiry continues for another hour. Brennan brings up regulations, safety protocols, chain of command. Crawford counters with casualty, figures engagement ranges, loss rates. It becomes clear that they are not arguing about unauthorized ammunition expenditure. They are arguing about the future of naval warfare itself. Finally, Sutherland raises his hand. Gentlemen, I have heard enough. Admiral Brennan, with respect, I believe Captain Crawford deserves an opportunity to demonstrate his methods under controlled conditions, an official test, observed by senior officers. If his methods work, we implement them fleet-wide. If they fail, we return to conventional doctrine, and Captain Crawford accepts appropriate discipline. Brennan does not like this. But Sutherland outranks him, and more importantly, Sutherland is known for being apolitical, immune to the career calculations that drive men like Brennan. Very well, Brennan says. 1 official demonstration, November. That gives you 9 months to refine your methods, Captain. 9 months to prove you're not wasting our time and money. And if you fail... He does not finish the sentence. He does not need to. Crawford stands. Thank you, sirs. As he leaves, he passes a young seaman standing watch outside the wardroom. The seaman comes to attention. Crawford barely notices him. But the seaman notices Crawford, notices the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. The seaman's name is Robert Mitchell. He arrived aboard USS Indianapolis yesterday for temporary duty helping with damage control exercises. He does not know who Captain Crawford is. He does not know about radar-directed gunnery or the test in November or the battle between innovation and tradition that is about to determine the future of the Pacific War. He only knows that the officer who just walked past him looks like a man carrying a weight that might crush him. 3 months later, Robert is aboard USS Dakota. He has been there for 6 weeks. He has learned to load shells in 20 seconds. He has earned Marcus Webb's grudging approval. He has not met Captain Crawford face-to-face since that night in the mess deck when they ate bacon together at 0300 hours. But he is about to. June 15, 1944. Robert is cleaning the loading tray in Turret 2, scrubbing powder residue from the rail guides when Webb calls him over. "Mitchell, Captain wants to see you. Bridge, now." Robert's stomach drops. "Did I do something wrong?" "Do I look like a mind reader?" Webb says. "Get topside." Robert climbs the ladder to the bridge. He has never been to the bridge. Enlisted men do not go to the bridge unless they are carrying messages or under arrest. He hopes it is the former. Crawford is studying a chart when Robert enters. "Seaman Mitchell reporting as ordered, sir." Crawford looks up. Recognition flickers. "The welder from Pittsburgh." "Yes, sir." "You asked good questions about the fire control system," Crawford says. "I need men who ask questions, men who understand that loading shells is not just muscle work. It is part of a larger system. Are you interested in learning how that system works?" Robert hesitates. Then he remembers Danny. Remembers Aunt Stella's letter. Remembers that every day he does not understand this system is a day someone else's cousin might die. "Yes, sir," he says, very interested. And so begins an unusual education. 3 times a week after regular drills, Crawford teaches Robert the basics of fire control. Not the classified details, Robert does not have clearance for that. But the concepts, how radar measures distance by timing radio wave reflections, how the Mark 1A computer uses mechanical integrators to solve differential equations, how wind and temperature and Earth's rotation all factor into where a shell will land. Robert learns that a shell fired at maximum elevation spends 93 seconds in the air. It climbs to an altitude of 50,000 feet higher than most aircraft can fly. At that height, the air is so thin that drag is negligible. The shell is essentially in ballistic flight like a baseball thrown across a diamond, except this baseball weighs more than a car and travels 23 miles. He learns that Earth's rotation matters. A shell fired due north in the northern hemisphere will drift right because the Earth is turning beneath it. The Coriolis effect. At 23 miles, this drift can be 300 yards. Ignore it and you miss. Account for it and you hit. He learns that temperature affects powder burn rate, which affects muzzle velocity, which affects range. A difference of 10 degrees Fahrenheit can change impact point by 50 yards. Crawford explains these things in his quiet, mumbling voice, drawing diagrams on a chalkboard in the wardroom after hours when other officers are asleep. He never asks Robert why he wants to learn. He just teaches. And Robert learns. Not because he wants to be a fire control technician. He is a loader. That is his job. But he learns because understanding the system makes him part of it, makes him more than just muscle, makes Danny's death mean something. July turns into August. August into September, the ship drills constantly. Loading times improve across all 3 turrets. Webb drives his crews hard, obsessed with shaving off seconds. 22 seconds becomes 20, 20 becomes 18. Crawford spends 18 hours a day refining his calculations. He looks worse every week, thinner, grayer. He develops a cough that does not go away. The ship's surgeon recommends rest. Crawford ignores him. At night, Robert sometimes sees lights in the wardroom at 0200, 0300 hours. Crawford alone, surrounded by papers, drinking coffee that has gone cold, calculating and recalculating firing solutions. Once Robert asks Webb, "Is the captain okay?" Webb looks at him for a long moment. Then he says, "Captain's fighting a war on two fronts, Mitchell. One against the Japs, one against admirals who think tradition is more important than American lives. That kind of war doesn't leave a man much time for sleep." September becomes October, October becomes November, and then it is November 11th, 1944, the day before the demonstration that will determine everything. Robert cannot sleep. He gets up at 0200 hours, pulls on his dungarees, walks to the mess deck. Gordon Price is there prepping for morning meal. He sees Robert and shakes his head. "You got the nerves too?" Gordon asks. "How do you know?" "Son, the whole ship's got the nerves. Tomorrow we prove the captain right, or we prove every admiral who doubts him right. That's the kind of weight that keeps sailors awake." Gordon cooks. Not bacon this time, too early for the good stuff, but eggs and toast. Robert eats without tasting. His mind is running through the loading sequence. Ram the shell. Clear the breech. Load the powder bags. Step back. 20 seconds. 18 if he is perfect. At 0300 hours, Crawford appears. He looks like he has not slept in days. There are dark circles under his eyes. His hands shake slightly as he pours coffee. "Can't sleep either, sir?" Robert asks. Crawford shakes his head. "Too much to think about." "Are we ready?" Crawford looks at him. "The math is ready. The equipment is ready. The question is whether the men who judge us are ready to accept what we prove tomorrow. What if they're not? Then we go back to fighting the war the old way," Crawford says, "and more boys like your cousin die, and I spend the rest of my life knowing I had the solution and couldn't convince anyone to use it." They sit in silence. Then Robert says, "Sir, I've been thinking about what you said, about mathematics, about trusting the numbers. My dad worked a rolling mill for 20 years before his accident," Robert says. 400 tons of steel moving 6 feet per second. The calculations said it was safe if you followed procedures. Dad followed procedures for 20 years. Then one day someone else didn't, and 400 tons of steel crushed his hand. Crawford waits. "Point is," Robert says, "the math was right, but humans made it wrong. Tomorrow the math is going to be right. The math is, we just have to make sure the humans don't make it wrong." Crawford smiles. It is a sad smile, but it is real. "That is exactly the problem, Seaman. That is exactly the problem." November 12, 1944, 0530 hours, USS Dakota steams toward the demonstration site. Behind her, USS Baltimore carries 11 flag officers including Admiral Brennan and Admiral Sutherland and Admiral Chester Hayes, commander of the Pacific Fleet, the man who will make the final decision about whether radar-directed gunnery lives or dies. The weather is not ideal, Brennan insisted on that. If Crawford's methods only work in perfect conditions, they are useless in combat. So the test will be conducted in moderate seas, 8-foot swells, 15-knot crosswind, overcast skies. The target is USS Salt Lake City, a decommissioned cruiser anchored at 24.3 miles, farther than the January test, farther than any successful gunnery engagement in naval history. Robert stands at his station in Turret 2. His hands are shaking. He grips the loading rail to hide it. Webb notices anyway. "You scared Mitchell?" "Terrified gun captain." "Good," Webb says. "Fear keeps you sharp. It's the men who aren't scared I worry about. The other loaders are quiet. 12 men in this turret, and every one of them understands what rides on the next few minutes. If they load slowly, if they fumble a shell, if anything goes wrong, Crawford's career ends and conventional doctrine wins and the Tokyo Express keeps running and more boys die. No pressure. 0600 hours. The ship reaches the firing position. The fire control team inputs data. Wind 14 knots from the northwest. Air temperature 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Barometric pressure 29.92 inches of mercury. Ship roll 4 degrees to port correcting. The Mark I. A computer hums and clicks. Gears turning, solving equations, translating wind and temperature and distance into angles and elevations that will put shells on target. The turrets begin to rotate, slowly. The massive gun barrels, each weighing 134 tons, swing toward bearing 045, then they elevate. 38 degrees, 39, 40. The guns are pointing at the sky, not the horizon. To the gun crews this looks wrong, but Crawford's math says it is right. The shells must arc high to reach 24 miles. So high they will briefly leave the atmosphere, flying through air so thin it offers almost no resistance. Crawford's voice comes through the intercom. "All stations report ready." One by one the responses come back. "Turret 1 ready." "Turret 2 ready." That is Webb's voice. Robert is holding a shell on the loading tray, muscles already burning from the weight, waiting for the order to ram it home. "Turret 3 ready." Crawford's voice again. "Fire." The world ends. The blast throws Robert against the bulkhead, even though he is braced for it. The deck plates vibrate so hard his teeth chatter. The air fills with cordite smoke, thick and choking. His ears pop. The pressure wave slaps his face like an open palm. 9 shells, 24,300 pounds of steel, scream into the grey sky. Robert cannot see them, cannot hear them after 3 seconds. They are gone, climbing toward the cloud layer, arcing across a distance no human can comprehend except as numbers on a page. And then comes the waiting, 93 seconds. Aboard USS Baltimore, 5 miles away, the flag officers watch through binoculars. Admiral Brennan stands with his arms crossed, face expressionless. He has brought 3 junior officers with him specifically to witness what he believes will be Crawford's failure. A lesson in why tradition matters more than theory. Admiral Hayes stands beside him, saying nothing, watching the horizon. Through binoculars they can barely see Salt Lake City. 24 miles is beyond visual range, even on a clear day. In this weather, the target is a grey smudge, barely distinguishable from the waves. 80 seconds, 90. Brennan starts to lower his binoculars. The slightest smile touches his lips. Impact. The target disappears. Not hit, not damaged. Disappears. A column of flame erupts from where Salt Lake City was anchored. The explosion is so massive that officers on Baltimore instinctively step backward. Secondary explosions tear through the old ship's hull as ammunition stores cook off magazines, detonating in chain reaction. Within 30 seconds there is nothing left but smoke and debris. Silence on the observation deck. Through the smoke, as it clears, the officers can see wreckage. The cruiser has broken in half. Both halves are sinking. At 24.3 miles, 9 shells have achieved 7 direct hits. 7 out of 9, at a distance that every gunnery manual says makes precision impossible. In moderate seas, on the first salvo. Admiral Sutherland lowers his binoculars. He turns to Admiral Hayes. "Sir, I believe we have just witnessed the future of naval warfare." Admiral Brennan says nothing. His face has gone white. The junior officers he brought to witness Crawford's failure are staring at the smoke on the horizon, minds struggling to process what they have seen. Admiral Hayes picks up the radio handset. "Dakota, this is Hayes. Assessment confirmed. Target destroyed. Well done." Aboard USS Dakota, the crew erupts. Men are shouting, cheering. In Turret 2, the loaders are slapping each other's backs, laughing with relief and triumph. Robert collapses against the loading rack. His arms are trembling. His hands are bleeding where the shell's driving bands cut through his gloves. He has loaded 1 shell. In combat, he might load 50. But right now, this 1 shell feels like the most important thing he has ever done. Webb grips his shoulder. "You did good, Mitchell. Real good." Crawford's voice comes through the intercom one more time. "All hands well done. Secure from general quarters." But Crawford himself does not celebrate. On the bridge, he stands alone, looking at the smoke on the horizon. He has just proven that mathematics can change warfare. He has shown that radar and computers can extend the reach of naval guns beyond anything previously thought possible. And he knows with absolute certainty that this is only the beginning. Because in Washington there are men who will see this success as a threat. Men whose careers are built on conventional doctrine, on human judgment, on traditions that Crawford's methods make obsolete. They will fight him. They will use regulations and politics and bureaucracy as weapons. The Japanese he can beat with mathematics. His own navy is going to be harder. But Robert Mitchell does not know any of this yet. He only knows that today they hit a target 24 miles away. Today they proved that the horizon is not a limit, and somewhere in some future battle, fewer boys like Danny will die because of it. That is enough. For now, that is enough. January 3rd, 1945, the Philippine Sea, USS Wisconsin's sister ship to Dakota, steams at 18 knots through water the color of hammered steel. She is one of 4 Iowa-class battleships now equipped with Captain Crawford's radar-directed gunnery methods, the methods that destroyed a target at 24 miles. The methods that Admiral Hayes authorized for fleet-wide implementation after the November demonstration, the methods that are about to kill 2 American sailors, 0847 hours, Wisconsin's radar detects a Japanese supply convoy, 3 cargo ships, 2 destroyer escorts distance 21 miles bearing 170. The convoy is attempting to resupply Japanese garrisons in the southern Philippines. Standard procedure now is to engage at maximum range, destroy the convoy before it can scatter, or call for air support. Wisconsin's fire control team inputs the data. The Mark I, a computer, begins its calculations: wind speed, barometric pressure, target course and speed. The mechanical gears spin, solving differential equations, translating raw numbers into firing solutions. But there is a problem. In the fire control computer's gear assembly in a mechanism manufactured 9 months ago at a factory in Hartford, Connecticut, in a batch designated 47B, there is a defect. A single gear tooth improperly heat-treated, microscopically weakened. The gear has been operating normally for 3 months. It has calculated firing solutions for 17 engagements. It has worked perfectly. Until now. 0851 hours. The defective gear tooth shears off. The gear train jams. The computer freezes mid-calculation, and then attempting to continue operation, it feeds incorrect data to the gun directors. Numbers that are catastrophically wrong. The fire control officer does not notice. The system appears to be functioning normally. The guns traverse, elevate, lock on bearing. Fire, 9 16-inch shells arc into the sky. The first salvo lands 1.2 miles short of the convoy. A complete miss. The fire control officer frowns, orders a recalculation. The second salvo fires before anyone realizes the computer is malfunctioning. 9 shells climb into the sky arc across the ocean, begin their descent. But the bearing is wrong. The range is wrong. Everything is wrong. 4 miles away, USS Herman, a Fletcher-class destroyer providing escort for Wisconsin's task group, is executing a routine course change. Her commanding officer is on the bridge drinking coffee, discussing the upcoming mail call with his executive officer. At 0853 hours, a 16-inch shell weighing 2,700 pounds strikes Herman's forward deck at terminal velocity. The explosion is instantaneous. The shell penetrates through the main deck, through the berthing compartment, through the keel, and detonates in the water beneath the ship. The blast lifts Herman's bow 10 feet out of the water. Metal screams, bulkheads collapse. The forward fire room floods in seconds. 2 sailors die instantly. Seaman Donald Pierce, 20 years old, from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He was writing a letter to his girlfriend when the shell hit. They find his body in what remains of the berthing compartment, still holding a pen. Fireman Raymond Collar, 19 years old, from Flint, Michigan. He was sleeping after a watch shift. The explosion killed him so quickly he probably never woke up. 11 others are wounded, burns, shrapnel, broken bones. 1 sailor loses his left arm below the elbow. Another loses his hearing permanently. USS Herman does not sink, but she is crippled. She will require 6 months of repair work. She will never see combat again. And Captain Thomas Crawford, aboard USS Dakota, 300 miles away, receives the news via coded message at 1420 hours. Wisconsin, friendly fire incident, stop. 2 KIA-11, WIA stop. Cause, under investigation, stop. Crawford reads the message 3 times. Then he walks to his cabin, closes the door, and sits at his desk. On the desk are 2 photographs. One shows a young sailor in dress whites smiling at the camera, Seaman Donald Pierce. The other shows another young sailor, this one in dungarees, also smiling, Fireman Raymond Collar. The photographs arrived with the casualty report, standard procedure. Crawford stares at the photographs. Both boys look impossibly young. Pierce has freckles and red hair and ears that stick out slightly. Collar has a crooked smile and a cowlick that will not stay down. They are dead because of Crawford's methods. Dead because he convinced the Navy to trust radar and computers instead of human judgment. Dead because a gear in a computer malfunctioned and fed wrong numbers to guns that do not care whether targets are enemy or friendly. They only care about bearing and elevation. Crawford's hands are shaking. His chest hurts a sharp pain behind his sternum that radiates down his left arm. The ship's surgeon has warned him about this. Angina, stress-induced, potentially fatal if he does not rest. Crawford has ignored the warnings. There is too much work to do, too many ships to train, too many sailors whose lives depend on implementing these methods fleet-wide before the next major battle. But now 2 sailors are dead because of those methods, and Crawford is alone in his cabin, staring at photographs of boys who will never go home. There is a knock on the door. "Go away," Crawford says. The door opens anyway. Robert Mitchell stands in the doorway. He is not supposed to be here. Enlisted men do not enter the captain's cabin uninvited. But Mitchell sees Crawford's face, sees the photographs on the desk, and understands. "Sir, I heard about Wisconsin." "Get out, Mitchell." Mitchell does not move. "Sir, it wasn't your fault." Crawford looks up. His eyes are red. 2 boys are dead because I convinced the Navy to use this system. How is that not my fault?" "It was a defective gear, sir. Manufacturing error. Could have happened to any equipment." "But it happened to my equipment," Crawford says. "My system. My responsibility." Mitchell takes a step into the cabin. "Sir, you told me mathematics keeps men alive. Danny died because we weren't using your methods yet. 312 boys died on the Pittsburgh. 2 died on the Herman because of a defective gear. You can do that math, sir." Crawford stares at him. "That is not how responsibility works, Seaman." "Then how does it work?" Mitchell asks. "Admiral Brennan's way of fighting has killed thousands. Your way killed 2 because 1 gear failed. The numbers don't lie, sir." Silence. Then Crawford says quietly, "Get out of my cabin, Mitchell." Mitchell leaves. He has said what he came to say. Whether it helped or not, he does not know. But Crawford sits alone for another hour, staring at the photographs, and the pain in his chest gets worse. The investigation takes 2 weeks. Technical experts from the Bureau of Ships examine Wisconsin's fire control computer. They find the defective gear in batch 47B from the Hartford factory. They test the other gears in the same batch. 12% failure rate, unacceptable. The entire batch is recalled. The official report concludes mechanical failure, not systemic flaw. Recommend redundancy checks in fire control systems. Recommend continued use of radar-directed gunnery with improved quality control. But the political damage is done. Admiral Victor Brennan, commander of the task force that includes Dakota, who has been waiting for exactly this kind of failure, seizes his opportunity. He writes a memo to the Chief of Naval Operations. The memo is marked secret and distributed to every flag officer in the Pacific Fleet. The memo argues that radar-directed gunnery, while theoretically sound, is operationally dangerous. The Wisconsin incident proves that mechanical systems cannot be trusted in combat. Human judgment experience and traditional gunnery methods are more reliable. The memo recommends a comprehensive safety review and suspension of radar-directed gunnery until that review is complete. 3 admirals endorse Brennan's memo. 2 more express concerns. Implementation of Crawford's methods slows, then stops. Ships that have already been trained continue using the system. Ships that have not been trained return to conventional doctrine. Admiral Hayes reads Brennan's memo and understands exactly what is happening. This is not about safety. This is about career protection. This is about admirals who see Crawford's success as a threat to their own relevance. Hayes calls Crawford to his flagship on January 20th, 1945. They meet in Hayes's cabin, just the 2 of them. Hayes is 62 years old, 4-star admiral commander of the entire Pacific Fleet. Crawford is 46, captain of 1 battleship, looking 10 years older than he did 6 months ago. "Captain, I'm going to be direct," Hayes says. "Brennan wants your head. He's using Wisconsin to argue that your methods are too dangerous for fleet-wide use. He has support from officers who see radar-directed gunnery as a threat to conventional expertise. If I don't give them something, they will bury your work in bureaucracy until the war is over. Crawford nods. He expected this. But I have an opportunity for you, Hayes continues. Lingayen Gulf. We're invading Luzon in 72 hours. It will be the largest naval operation since D-Day. 160 ships supporting the landing of 43,000 troops. Intelligence reports indicate Japanese surface forces may attempt a counterattack from the north. Crawford waits. I need every Iowa-class battleship using your methods, Hayes says. I need you to destroy any Japanese ships that try to reach our landing fleet. If you succeed, if you can demonstrate that radar-directed gunnery works in a major fleet action, then Brennan's objections become irrelevant. But if you fail, if anything goes wrong, your career is over, and conventional doctrine wins. Crawford looks at the Admiral. You're asking me to bet everything on one battle. I'm asking you to prove one more time that the equations work, Hayes says. Can you do that? Crawford thinks about Wisconsin, about Pierce and Collar, about the pain in his chest that gets worse every day, about the fact that his ship's surgeon has told him privately that he is heading for a major heart attack if he does not rest. And he thinks about the casualty reports from the past 2 years. Savo Island, Tassafaronga, Guadalcanal, thousands of American sailors dead because ships could not engage effectively at long range. Yes, sir, Crawford says. I can do that. January 12, 1945. Lingayen Gulf, Philippines, 0530 hours. The American invasion fleet stretches across the horizon. 160 ships, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, transports, supply vessels. 43,000 soldiers are preparing to land on the beaches of Luzon. The bombardment has been ongoing for 12 hours, 16-inch guns and 8-inch guns and 5-inch guns turning Japanese defensive positions into rubble. USS Dakota is part of the bombardment group. For the past 6 hours she has been firing at targets ashore, supporting the landing. Robert Mitchell has loaded 37 shells. His arms are burning, his back aches. His hands are bleeding through his gloves, but the work continues because the soldiers on those beaches need fire support. At 0545 hours, everything changes. Dakota's radar operator calls the bridge. Contact bearing 340, range 53 miles. Multiple targets, high-speed closing. Crawford is on the bridge instantly. Classification. Surface combatants, sir. Count is 2 heavy cruisers, 4 destroyers, multiple smaller vessels. Crawford understands immediately. This is the counterattack. Japanese surface forces attempting to reach the invasion fleet, trying to attack the transports and supply ships before the landing is complete. 53 miles. Beyond visual range, beyond torpedo range, but not beyond the range of Dakota's guns. Crawford picks up the radio handset. Admiral Hayes, this is Dakota. Request permission to break from bombardment group and intercept northern contact. Hayes's voice crackles back. Range to contact. 53 miles, sir. A pause. Then, no one's ever engaged at 53 miles, Captain. No one's ever had to, sir, Crawford says. Permission to engage? Another pause. Crawford can imagine the calculations happening in Hayes's mind. If Dakota breaks off and fails to stop the Japanese, the invasion could be jeopardized. But if she stays on bombardment duty and lets the Japanese through, the invasion definitely will be jeopardized. Permission granted, Hayes says. Godspeed, Captain. Crawford turns to his fire control team. Plot intercept course. I want firing solution at maximum range. The Mark 1A computer hums to life. Gears spinning. Solving equations. Wind 12 knots from the northeast. Sea state moderate. Target bearing 340. Target speed 28 knots. Target course 160 toward the invasion fleet. Time to intercept 37 minutes if Dakota maintains current course. But Crawford does not have 37 minutes. In 37 minutes, the Japanese will be close enough to launch torpedoes at the transports. He needs to engage now at a range where engagement has never been attempted. Range to target, Crawford asks. Now at 48 miles and closing, sir. Crawford makes his decision. All turrets prepare to engage at 4-5 miles. In turret 2, Robert Mitchell hears the order and his stomach drops. 45 miles. The November demonstration was 24 miles and that seemed impossible. 45 miles is nearly double. Webb sees his face. "You scared, Mitchell?" "Yes, gun captain." "Good," Webb says. "Now load that shell and trust the numbers." The shell weighs the same as it always weighs, 2,700 pounds, but somehow it feels heavier, because this one is not practice, this one is not a demonstration, this one is going to travel 45 miles and either save American soldiers or prove that Crawford's methods fail when it matters most. 0602 hours, range to target 45.1 miles. Crawford's voice on the intercom. "All stations stand by." Robert grips the loading rail. The sequence is automatic now. Ram the shell. Clear the breech. Load the powder bags. Step back. He has done this hundreds of times in drills, but this time American lives depend on speed and precision. Fire! The world explodes. 9 shells launch. The recoil slams Robert against the bulkhead despite being braced. The deck plates vibrate. The air fills with smoke. His ears ring. And then silence. 114 seconds of flight time. Nearly 2 minutes. The shells climb higher than they have ever climbed, arc across a distance that seems impossible, begin their descent toward targets that the gun crews have never seen and will never see. 45 miles away aboard the Japanese heavy cruiser, Ashigara Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita stands on the bridge and watches the American invasion fleet through binoculars. 22 miles distant, still too far for torpedoes. But in 20 minutes his destroyers will be in range. In 20 minutes he can launch a devastating attack on the American transports. He does not know that shells are falling toward him from the sky. At 0604 hours, the first shell impacts. Ashigara's forward deck erupts. The explosion tears through the bridge, kills Kurita's executive officer and navigation team instantly. Kurita himself is thrown against the bulkhead, disoriented ears bleeding. The ship shudders, list to starboard, begins taking water. The second shell hits 6 seconds later. Direct hit on the engine room. Ashigara's engines die. She begins to slow. The other Japanese ships see Ashigara explode and cannot understand what is happening. There are no American ships visible, no aircraft overhead. The shells are simply falling from empty sky. Dakota's second salvo arrives 93 seconds later. The destroyer Kasumi takes a direct hit amidships. She breaks in half. Both halves sink in under 2 minutes. 93 sailors go into the water. 12 will be rescued. The second heavy cruiser Nachi is bracketed by 3 shells. One hits her forward turret, blowing the guns off their mountings. Another hits near the stern, jamming her rudder. The third is a near miss that still causes catastrophic flooding. The Japanese formation disintegrates. Some ships try to flee, some try to advance. None of them know where the shells are coming from or how to defend against them. Dakota fires a third salvo, a fourth, a fifth. Robert Mitchell loads shells until muscle memory takes over completely. The rhythm is automatic now. His hands move without thought. Load, ram, step back, load, ram, step back. The world narrows to this single task, repeated until his hands are bleeding through the gloves, through the bandages under the gloves, bleeding onto the steel deck. Webb counts the shells. 43, 44, 45, 51. 18 minutes after the first shot, the battle is over. 4 Japanese ships are sinking or have sunk. 3 more are damaged, limping away at reduced speed, trailing smoke and debris. The counterattack has been destroyed before it came within 30 miles of the invasion fleet. American casualties, 0. On the bridge, Crawford receives the damage report. He does not celebrate. He walks to the wing of the bridge and looks north toward where the Japanese ships are dying. He is thinking about the sailors on those ships, sailors who are burning or drowning or screaming, sailors who never saw the enemy that killed them. He is thinking about Donald Pierce and Raymond Collar killed by friendly fire. He is thinking about all the death that mathematics has caused and prevented. The pain in his chest is worse than it has ever been. Robert Mitchell emerges from turret 2 into daylight. His uniform is soaked with sweat. His hands are wrapped in bloody bandages. His arms are trembling from exhaustion. Webb grips his shoulder. 51 shells, Mitchell. 18 minutes. New record. How many did we kill? Robert asks. Webb looks at him. Estimates say 1,200 Japanese sailors, but you saved 4,000 American soldiers who won't get torpedoed. Robert nods, but something in his chest feels heavy. He thinks about Danny dead because American ships could not shoot far enough. He thinks about Pierce and Collar dead because a gear failed. He thinks about 1,200 Japanese sailors who died today without ever seeing the guns that killed them. The equations say this is victory. Robert believes the equations, but belief and feeling are not the same thing. February 1945. The war continues. Crawford's methods are vindicated. Admiral Brennan's objections evaporate in the face of overwhelming success. Radar-directed gunnery becomes standard doctrine across the Pacific Fleet. But Thomas Crawford is dying. The ship's surgeon, Dr. Malcolm Preston, examines him on February 15th and delivers the news that Crawford already knows. Captain, you have severe coronary artery disease. You've had at least 2 minor heart attacks in the past 6 months. If you don't rest, you will die within a year, maybe less. Crawford nods. How long if I keep working? 6 months, maybe less. Captain, I'm ordering you to rest. Your heart cannot sustain this pace. Thank you, Doctor, Crawford says. That will be all. 3 days later, Crawford calls Mitchell to his cabin. Seaman Mitchell, sit. Robert sits. Crawford looks worse than he has ever seen him. Grey, thin, shaking slightly. Sir, I'm dying, Mitchell. Heart disease. 6 months, maybe less. Robert opens his mouth. Crawford raises a hand. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you because you need to know this work continues after I'm gone. The calculations, the methods. They'll try to bury it again. Brennan's allies. The old guard. Sir, I'm just a loader. You're the man who believed when no one else did, Crawford says. When this is over, when I'm gone, there will be officers who say radar-directed gunnery only worked because I was obsessive. They'll say it can't be replicated. They'll say tradition is safer. Geez, Crawford slides a folder across the desk. This is every calculation, every test, every engagement. I've made copies. Commander Pierce has 1 set, Admiral Hayes has another, and now you have the 3rd. Sir, I don't understand. You don't need to understand the math, Crawford says. You just need to tell anyone who asks it worked. You were there. You loaded the shells. You saw the results. 45 miles, 0 American casualties. That's not theory, that's fact. Robert takes the folder. Why me? Crawford smiles. Because admirals will lie to protect their careers. But a Pittsburgh welder who just wanted to go home, people will believe you. Silence. Sir, thank you for teaching me, for trusting me, Crawford nods. Thank your cousin Danny. He's the reason you cared enough to learn. That is the last time they speak. That night, Crawford writes a letter to his wife Sarah in Kentucky. The work matters more than my health. If I stop now, there are still officers who will try to bury radar-directed gunnery in regulations and bureaucracy. They will call it experimental, dangerous, unproven, despite everything we have achieved. I cannot let that happen. Every week we do not use these methods. American sailors die unnecessarily. I will take 6 months of work over 20 years of retirement if it means boys like Mitchell's cousin Danny do not die for nothing. Do not mourn me when I am gone. I am choosing this. I have made peace with it. He does not mail the letter. He puts it in his desk drawer and goes back to work. March, April, May. Crawford travels from ship to ship, training fire control teams, New Jersey, Missouri, Wisconsin, post-repair. He works 16-hour days, sleeps 3 or 4 hours. The pain in his chest becomes constant, a dull ache that occasionally spikes into sharp agony. He ignores it. There is too much work to do. Robert watches Crawford deteriorate. Everyone on Dakota watches, but no one can stop him. He is the captain. He gives the orders, and his orders are to keep working, keep training, keep spreading the methods that are saving American lives. On August 6, 1945, an atomic bomb destroys Hiroshima. On August 9th, another destroys Nagasaki. On August 15th, Japan announces its surrender. The war is over. Crawford has won. His methods have been proven. His revolution is complete. Thousands of American sailors have survived because ships could engage enemy forces from beyond torpedo range. But Crawford does not celebrate. He is aboard USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, preparing for the formal surrender ceremony scheduled for September 2nd. There is paperwork to complete, reports to file, protocols to observe. August 25th, 1945, 0340 hours, 10 days after Japan's surrender announcement. Captain Thomas Crawford wakes in his cabin aboard USS Missouri with crushing pain in his chest, radiating down both arms into his jaw. He knows what this is. The final heart attack. The one Dr. Preston warned him about. He tries to call for help, cannot speak, cannot move. The pain is too great. He dies alone in his cabin 3 minutes later. He is 57 years old. What Thomas Crawford never sees, the formal surrender ceremony aboard Missouri 2 days after his death. The Japanese delegation signing the instruments of surrender. The Iowa-class battleships lined up in Tokyo Bay, symbols of American technological and industrial supremacy. The historians who will later call him the most influential naval tactician of the 20th century. He dies believing his work will continue. He is right about that, but he never knows for certain. The funeral is held at Arlington National Cemetery on September 8, 1945. Admiral Chester Hayes delivers the eulogy. Thomas Crawford fought 2 wars, one against an enemy across the ocean, one against ignorance and resistance in our own ranks. He won both. Thousands of American sailors came home because he refused to accept that tradition was superior to truth. The Navy is better for his service. The nation is safer for his sacrifice. We will not see his like again. Among the mourners standing in the back is Admiral Victor Brennan. He does not speak. He does not approach Crawford's widow. He simply stands watching the burial, his face unreadable. After the ceremony, Robert Mitchell approaches him. Robert is on leave from Dakota, wearing his dress blues, looking older than his 24 years. "Admiral Brennan, sir." Brennan looks at him. "Seaman Mitchell, Dakota's loader." "Yes, sir." Silence. Then Robert says, "You tried to destroy him." Brennan does not deny it. "I did. I was wrong. Pride is a sin, son. I will carry that until I die." "He saved thousands of lives," Robert says, "and he died before he could see the surrender. That's what kills me. He did all this and never got to see it matter." Brennan looks at the fresh grave. He knew it mattered. Men like Crawford always know. They just do not need applause to confirm it. November 1945. Robert Mitchell returns to Pittsburgh. The war is over. The ships are being mothballed. The sailors are going home. The train pulls into Union Station on a grey November afternoon. Robert's mother is waiting on the platform. His father stands beside her, leaning on a cane, his crushed hand in his pocket. Dwight is there, looking envious and relieved in equal measure. Eleanor is there, still stained yellow from cordite powder, still working munitions even though the war is over. His mother cries. His father shakes his hand, the good hand gripping Robert's hand, and says, "You did good, son." That is all. No questions, no details, just acknowledgement. Robert goes back to welding. He gets his old job at the shipyard. In 1947, he marries Helen Novak, a girl from the neighborhood who worked as a riveter during the war. They have 3 children, Gary in 1949, Patricia in 1951, Vincent in 1954. They live in a row house on the north side, 3 blocks from where Robert grew up. He works at the shipyard for 37 years. He retires in 1982 with a pension and a gold watch and a handshake from the foreman. He never talks about the war. His children ask sometimes, "Dad, what did you do in the Navy?" I loaded shells, Robert says. That was my job. But what did you do with the shells? Loaded them into guns. The guns fired them. He will not say more, cannot say more. How do you explain Lingayen Gulf to children who have never seen war? How do you describe loading shells that killed 1,200 men from 45 miles away? How do you talk about Captain Crawford, who died believing mathematics could save lives, who was right but never lived to see peace? You do not. You just say what you did, and you go back to welding, and you hope that silence is enough. June 1987. Robert Mitchell, 71 years old, receives a package from Japan. Return address, Osaka. Inside a letter, English translation attached. Dear Mr. Mitchell, my name is Hiroshi Yamada. I am writing on behalf of my late father, Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita, who commanded Japanese forces at Lingayen Gulf, January 1945. Before my father died in 1977, he wrote a memoir. He never published it, too painful. But he left instructions that excerpts be sent to American sailors who fought that day. My father wrote, "The Americans did not defeat us with hatred. They defeated us with mathematics. Their shells fell from invisible sky. We could not fight what we could not see. It was not cowardice that made us retreat. It was the certainty that we faced something beyond our understanding." He also wrote, "I have spent 30 years hating the men who killed my sailors. But hatred is exhausting." Now I wonder, did those American gunners take any pride in killing from such distance? Or did they, like us, simply follow orders and live with what they had done? My father wanted you to know he did not die at Lingayen. He survived, was rescued, spent 2 years in prison camp. American guards treated him with unexpected kindness. It changed him. He became a professor of engineering at Osaka University. He helped rebuild Japan. He lived to see his grandchildren. He asked that I thank the American sailors who showed mercy, even in victory. Who could have pursued our damaged ships and slaughtered survivors but did not? Your mathematics ended the battle, but your restraint allowed men like my father to go home. Respectfully, Hiroshi Yamada. Robert reads the letter 3 times. Kurita survived. The admiral whose flagship took the first hit at 45 miles. The man whose sailors died without seeing their killer. He lived, he taught. He had grandchildren. Robert walks to his desk, pulls out a folder he has kept for 42 years, the one Crawford gave him before dying. Inside is a letter Robert wrote in 1945, never sent, the one to his mother about feeling empty after victory. He writes a response to Hiroshi Yamada. Dear Mr. Yamada, thank you for your father's words. For 42 years I have carried the weight of Lingayen Gulf. I loaded shells that killed 1,200 men from a distance they never imagined possible. I did not celebrate victory. I felt empty. Your father asked if we took pride. We did not. We simply loaded shells and trusted the equations and hoped it meant something. Please tell your father's grandchildren their grandfather was a brave man who faced impossible odds with honor. War made us enemies, mathematics made us killers, but time perhaps can make us something else. I am glad he went home. I am glad he taught. I am glad you exist. That is enough. Robert Mitchell. He mails it. 3 weeks later, response from Hiroshi. Mr. Mitchell, my father passed away in 1977. He never read your letter, but I did, and I will tell my children what you wrote. Perhaps that is the real victory, not what we did in war, but what we became after. Thank you. Robert folds both letters, puts them in the shoebox with his service records, Crawford's folder, the photograph from Turret 2. He dies 7 years later, 1994, knowing that at least one enemy understood. November the 3rd, 1994. Robert Mitchell dies in his sleep. He is 73 years old. Cause of death, heart failure. Peaceful. No pain. His obituary in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is 4 sentences long. Robert Mitchell, 73, shipyard worker and Navy veteran, died peacefully, November the 3rd at his home. He served aboard USS Dakota during World War II. He is survived by his wife Helen, children, Gary, Patricia, and Vincent, and 7 grandchildren. Services will be held Friday at St. Stanislaus Church. No mention of Lingayen Gulf, no mention of 51 shells loaded in 18 minutes, no mention of the revolution he helped create, the lives his work saved, the mathematics he trusted when others would not. Just Navy veteran, survived by family. Services Friday. 25 years later, in 2019, Robert's grandson James is cleaning out his grandfather's attic. He finds a shoebox in the corner covered in dust. Inside, service records, a photograph of Turret 2 crew, 1944, a letter from Admiral Hayes' commendation for exemplary service, a newspaper clipping yellowed with age. Radar gunnery destroys Japanese fleet, Dakota crew honored. Crawford's folder of calculations, and 2 letters from Japan, 1987. Robert's name is circled in the crew roster. James reads everything 3 times. The clipping, the commendation, the letters from Hiroshi Yamada, his grandfather's response. He realizes his grandfather destroyed ships from distances that should have been impossible, changed naval warfare forever, carried guilt for 42 years, received forgiveness from an enemy he never knew survived, and never said a word. James takes a day off work. He drives to Los Angeles to the harbor where USS Dakota sits as a museum ship. He stands in front of Turret 2. There is a plaque listing the crew names. Robert Mitchell Loader, 1944 to 1945. Tours walk by, not reading the names. A docent explains about the guns, the range, the battles. No one mentions the loaders who made it possible. An elderly man, a museum volunteer, notices James staring at the plaque. "You interested in the turret crews?" the man asks. "My grandfather," James says. "Robert Mitchell, he loaded shells here." The volunteer's eyes widen. "Really, did he ever talk about it?" James shakes his head. "Only once. Told me he was doing his job." The volunteer smiles sadly. "They all say that. The real heroes always do." James stands there for a long time, looking at the guns his grandfather served. He thinks about the letter from Japan in the shoebox. The one from Hiroshi Yamada thanking the American sailors who showed restraint. He thinks about the letter his grandfather wrote back, never knowing Kurita had already died. 2 men enemies, both carrying guilt for 40 years, both wondering if the other understood, both trying to forgive and be forgiven, neither knowing the other felt the same weight. And somewhere in the trajectory of every precision weapon fired since 1944, in every GPS-guided missile, in every fire control system that translates radar data into targeting solutions, Thomas Crawford's mathematics still arc through the sky. And somewhere in the discipline and precision and trust in numbers over fear, in the restraint that let damaged enemy ships limp away instead of slaughtering survivors, Robert Mitchell's humanity still loads shells. The horizon was never a limit. It was the distance between enemies who never spoke, and the forgiveness that arrived too late. Between the mathematics that killed 1,200 men, and the mercy that let one admiral go home to teach his grandchildren. Between doing your job and carrying its weight for 50 years. Robert Mitchell understood that difference. He just never spoke about it. Maybe that was the point. Maybe the real heroes carry the weight in silence and hope that someday someone understands. The letter from Japan said someone did. That had to be enough.